All right, boys and girls, welcome back to the Green Zone. This is episode 32, and we've been on fire lately, boys and girls. We're going to hope to keep this going. That's right, we're going to roll right into week 13 and just keep winning. I don't know what else to tell you. We're just going to get in that zone and make that green. Get that money, baby. All about the cream. Okay, first up, we got head-to-head pick'ems, guys. If you don't know by now, then I don't know what you've been doing, but you haven't been watching my show, and I'm not really interested in explaining, so we're going to go head-to-head pick'ems right off the rip, and as we like to say here on the Green Zone, let's kick it off. First up, we got Titans at Colts, guys. These two teams are tied standings-wise within their division. It should be a close game earlier on in the year. The Titans lost this game by, I believe it was less than 3 points, maybe 2 points. A 19-17 total score. These teams have changed a little bit, however, though. And you got the Titans are a little bit on a roll here. As soon as they change quarterbacks from Mariota to Tannehill, they've just been buzzing, and this team looks good. Derrick Henry is their workhorse. They ride on their defense and their running back, and then timely throwing from Tannehill. On the other hand, you got the Colts, who have dipped down a little bit. They started out better than everyone expected. After losing Luck, Brissett stepped up to the plate. Later on in the year, he got injured. They took a step back. Now he's back, but they haven't really returned to form. I like the Titans continuing their win streak, going into Indy and beating the Colts. Next, we got the 49ers at the Ravens. Excuse me, I'm real excited this week. We got the 49ers at the Ravens, guys. Look, I know last week I told you that the Niners would blow out the Packers. That was an exclusive here on the Green Zone that you got from me. I know a lot of people were surprised, but if you watched the show, you weren't. You were like, my boy Jimmy set me up. He knew. This week's going to be a tougher one, guys. As well as the Niners match up against pocket passing quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, like a Drew Brees that they'll have next week, they do not match up well against running, scrambling type quarterbacks. That's why they struggle against Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, and now the best of the bunch, Lamar Jackson. Don't put it against me by saying that Russell Wilson is just a scrambling quarterback. He's not. What I'm trying to say is that he knows how to move throughout in and out of the pocket, and he can use his legs to hurt you. And that's mainly what he did against the Niners in that very close Monday Night Football game. Now we've got a Lamar Jackson type quarterback who no one's been able to figure out and or stop this year. I don't think the Niners are that team. I understand that defense is awesome. Number one passing defense in the league. They're a top rush defense as well. Top total defense in the league. But they struggle at what is their kryptonite, a rushing, scrambling type quarterback who can use his athleticism and his legs as well as his arms. I'm going to say the Ravens win this one. Don't kill me, faithful. We're going to be all right and bounce back next week against the Saints. Next, we've got the Jets at the Bengals, guys, in a battle of the shits, as I like to say here. Nobody cares about this game other than the fans of these two teams. Jets are on a little bit of a roll. Bengals are probably the worst team in the NFL. I'll say it again. I said that before the year started. You're welcome. The Bengals lose this one. And look, if they are going to win one, maybe it's this week because the Jets, it sets up as a letdown game for them after having a couple of big victories recently. But I just don't see it. Sam Darnold's rolling. Bengals don't play defense. The Jets can. Give me the Jets in this one. Got the Browns and the Steelers, guys. I told you guys the Browns would start off rough with all the expectations that they had on them, but then their schedule on the back end gets easier and they could put together a win streak. They are in the middle of that win streak right now. I think it continues against the Steelers as the Steelers have a great defense, but no offense and no quarterback to be heard of. Give me the Browns in this one. Eagles at Dolphins, guys. Do I really need to get into this? Carson Wentz and the Eagles have been struggling. They look terrible, but that defense has looked good. It's really the offense and Wentz that looks to be the struggling part of that team. I think the Eagles put it together against a crappy Dolphins team in a non-surprise fashion. Win this one with relative ease. Eagles. Eagles get it done. Next, we've got the Redskins at the Panthers, guys. Panthers win the game. Redskins are terrible. Please, let's just move on. Packers at Giants, guys. Packers had a rough one against the Niners last week. Like I said before, if you listened to my podcast, you knew that was going to happen. The Niners just match up too well against the Packers. However, the Packers are set up and poised for a bounce-back game against a crappy, young, developing, building franchise of a team in the Giants. I think the Packers bounce back big, similar to how they bounced back after their loss to the Chargers. They bounced back against the Panthers. They've now lost to another California team in the 49ers. They're going to bounce back against this young Giants team who's still trying to figure it out. Expect the Packers to win and probably win big in that one. We'll talk about that later in the betting segment. Next, we've got the Buccaneers at the Jaguars, guys. I'm going to say that this one to me is definitely a toss-up, but I'm going to go ahead and say that the Buccaneers get it done. I would not be surprised if the Jaguars win. So we're having some audio difficulties here. That volume is way too low. By the way, we're going to have a little drink break here, so go ahead and grab your beers, your sodas, whoever. If you got kids in the room, I apologize. And just take a little sip, because I'm going to do it. You might as well do it with me. All right, guys. Next, we've got the Buccaneers and the Jaguars. Exactly. This game could go either way. The Buccaneers started out as the underdog in this game. They're now a -3 favorite. We'll go over that later in the betting segment. This is just head-to-head. Get a little ahead of myself. I like the Buccaneers. I think they're the better team. I think the Jaguars are reeling. I think that the Buccaneers stop the run almost better than any team in the NFL. As far as yards per game is concerned, they are the best at stopping the run. The Jaguars rely on their rushing game and Leonard Fournette to then build their pass game off of that. I think the Buccaneers are a bad matchup for the Jags. I think the Buccaneers can win this game, as the Jaguars are no longer a daunting defensive challenge for offenses. Then we got the Rams and the Cardinals, guys. Divisional matchup, so this could be crazy, this could be close, right? That's how divisional matchups go. However, as much as the Rams have been struggling, they are still in the playoff picture. Do not count them out yet. They have NFC Championship caliber players on their team. We know that from last year. The Cardinals, on the other hand, are a young team, I think developing better than most thought. I think the Rams win this game. I know that the Rams offense is struggling. The Cardinals' defense might be just what the doctor ordered for the Rams. I think they get it done in this one. Expect Goff and probably Cooper Kupp to get back in it and performing the way you expect them to when it comes to fantasy. Raiders and Chiefs, guys. I like the Chiefs big in this one. As good as that Chiefs defense is, or offense is, that defense is terrible. So if you look back, you notice that a lot of times the Chiefs do put up a lot of points, but they don't win by a wide margin. This could be a week that they do. The Raiders are reeling. Raiders are coming off of a terrible loss to the New York Jets. That was across country. They come back a little bit closer to home. They're still on the road. It seems like the Raiders have been on the road all year this year. I expect the Chiefs to win and probably win big in this one, but no doubt of a win in the head-to-head matchup there. Chargers at Broncos, guys. Here's an upset for you. I think the Broncos can win this game. Broncos defense has shown that they can really give quarterbacks fits this year. I think they get back on track and they give some Phillip Rivers a little bit of trouble. I think it'll be a close game, but look, it could go either way. Stay away from this game when it comes to betting. Head-to-head, I'm just going to call the upset, say the Broncos win this game at home. I don't really think the Chargers are that good. Next, we got the Pats at the Texans, guys. I think the Pats win this game. I think they win it with relative ease. The Texans are good within their division, but when they step out and they play better teams, a la the Ravens a couple of weeks or last week, they get blown out. This is another good team in the Patriots. I expect the Patriots to beat the Texans. Vikings and Seahawks, guys, similar game. Both these teams are good. Both these teams are in the playoff hunt. Seahawks are better. This is where the NFC West shows you how top-heavy and stronger they are than the rest of the NFL. You're going to take a team like the Vikings, who have a great record. A lot of people are predicting to go deep in the playoffs. You're going to put them against an NFC West team. That NFC West team is going to beat them just because the Niners and the Seahawks are going to beat most opponents, as that is a strong division. All right, guys, that does it for head-to-head. We now move on to our fantasy segment. Last week in head-to-head matchups, pick'ems, whatever you want to call them, we went 11-2. That's now 2 weeks in a row where I've only given you 3 losses. So you're welcome. I don't know what else to say. All right, stop the music, cue the fantasy advice music. Doesn't get better. Next, we've got fantasy advice. Last week, I gave you 12 top 10 fantasy players. That includes one number 1. And actually, when it came to tight ends, guys, I gave you the number 1 and the number 2. Wide receivers, I gave you a number 2 as well. But that's 12 top 10s, one number 1, and all the tight ends I gave you finished in the top 10. Going on to quarterbacks, guys, I really like Mahomes this week. If you've got to spend a little bit more to get Mahomes, do it. It's the Raiders defense. That secondary's been hit or miss for the Raiders. I think this week is more of a miss. While this does set up for a trap game when it comes to the betting, I think just as far as fantasy goes and head-to-head pick'ems, I like Mahomes getting his and the Chiefs winning the game. Need a little bit of caffeine. Alrighty then. Next we got Aaron Rodgers, guys. If you think about it, if it's going to be a bounce-back game for the Packers, and they're going to beat the pants off of the Giants like I think they will, Rodgers is going to get his points and he's going to get a lot of them. A-Rod getting his and getting it done. If you need some cheaper quarterbacks, some not as big names such as Mahomes and Rodgers, I got Jameis Winston for you. Winston has been a little bit on fire lately. Now, we all know Winston is incredibly inconsistent. He has been throwing for over 300 yards and multiple touchdowns the past couple of weeks. He can easily throw for 300 yards and 5 interceptions this week. However, he has a plus matchup, and I think that he continues his offensive streak. He's going to throw the ball 40-plus times. He's got 2 of the best receivers in the NFL, so the odds are Jameis is going to get some pretty good points. If you want to go even cheaper on your quarterbacks in your daily fantasy and you're thinking, I want to spend my money elsewhere because I do have some top-name running backs for you guys, here are some cheaper options at quarterback. Sam Darnold and Carson Wentz. These are plus matchup guys. Carson Wentz has been struggling big time, but the Miami Dolphins defense is atrocious. They are not good. He should be able to score or at least throw a couple of touchdowns, which will put him in top fantasy relevancy. Sam Darnold's been on fire lately. The kid's finally, I think, seeing the field and diagnosing it quicker than he has before. I like Sam Darnold getting his in a plus matchup against the Bungles as well. Running backs. First up, Christian McCaffrey. Make sure that in your daily fantasy, obviously in your standard fantasy, if you have Christian McCaffrey, you are starting him, penned him in, not penciled, no erases here. You've penned him in as your number 1 starting running back each week. That's going to continue, no doubt. However, in daily fantasy, you are going to need to spend the money to get Christian McCaffrey. He goes against the Washington Redskins. He is going to get all sorts of work against them as the Panthers rely heavily on Christian McCaffrey when their backs are against the wall. They are reeling right now. They have lost a few in a row. They're going to want to get back on that winning side. They're going to get the ball in the hands of McCaffrey. Give him in your daily fantasy if you have not already. Next, running backs. I've got Saquon Barkley. Now, if you drafted Saquon Barkley, you probably drafted him number 1, 2, or 3 overall, probably 1 or 2 in your daily fantasy. And he's been a little bit disappointing so far this year. Hasn't produced the way that we thought he would, right? Well, this is a week that he gets right. This is a week where the Packers beat the Giants, but Saquon gets his touches and gets his yards and probably gets into the end zone a couple of times against that Packers D, who is a mouth-watering matchup for running backs that are struggling. Give me Saquon. And next, guys, another running back who seems to be boomer bust, relatively consistent, but boomer bust when it comes to fantasy, is Josh Jacobs. He's a good running back. He plays well. He runs hard. He can also make you miss. Problem is, sometimes the Raiders start losing games, and they're down the entire game, which means Josh Jacobs' use goes down considerably. Last week, he had 35 all-purpose yards. Before that, he was averaging over 100 yards pretty much every game this year, guys. I like Josh Jacobs against that Kansas City Chiefs defense. They have the worst rush defense in the NFL. However, if the Chiefs get up big and they get up early, this could mean that Josh Jacobs in the game script for him goes thrown out the window by Gruden, and you don't really see him that much. So be careful with this one, but if you're struggling, you're running out of room, or maybe you just need a cheap flex option, you can get Josh Jacobs in there. All right, wide receivers, guys, Davante Adams. I always like to give you guys a wide receiver to pair up with that quarterback that I gave you earlier. Davante Adams and Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill are those 2 wide receivers this week. If you go with Mahomes, take Hill. If you go with Rodgers, take Davante Adams. I expect both wide receiver and quarterback combos to go off this week. They should get it done. Don't worry about it. Next, we got a couple of guys that maybe you haven't paid too much attention to because they've fallen off a little bit in the last few weeks, but these are guys that should be consistent as they have a ton of talent. Their offenses maybe have just been struggling around them. That being Cooper Kupp, which means you can get him for cheap. The Rams are going against the Cardinals. The Cardinals are the team that, if you're a struggling quarterback and a struggling offense who can't pass the ball, haven't been able to pass the ball recently, the doctor orders the Cardinals for you. I expect Goff to relatively get back on track, but more importantly, to start reconnect with Cooper Kupp as their long-lost love of connection comes back to fruition this week. Romance is in the air, baby. Then we've got the DJ Chark. There could be a Chark attack in the end of the end zone in the Jaguars game this week as they match up against the Titans. The Titans are a good defensive team. They're a good rushing team. They rely on that. Like I said, timely passing. However, they do give up some big plays here and there. And if there's going to be a big play to be had by the Jaguars and that passing offense, it's going to be from Nick Foles to DJ Chark. Expect maybe one Chark attack in the end of the end zone there. You can get Chark for cheaper if you spend a lot of your daily fantasy money on your running backs. All right, guys, tight ends. This is where we crushed it last week. I know that tight ends are struggling this year, and everyone's streaming a new tight end each week because there seems to be about 3 or 4 good tight ends, and then there's a cliff where everybody else falls off. I'm gonna try to help you through that. In daily fantasy, here are some options that you can get on the cheap after my first tight end option, Travis Kelce. Of course, you're not gonna get him on the cheap. If you do not go with Tyreek Hill at wide receiver, grab Travis Kelce, or vice versa, guys. Do not pair both Kelce, Mahomes, and Hill all on your team. It's too much cheap action. If they should shit the bed. You don't want that many of the same players from one team on your team. So anyways, Travis Kelce, number 1. Here are the cheaper options I just mentioned before Kelce. That would be Dallas Goedert and Ryan Griffin. These guys have been fantasy scoring machines in the last few weeks. Griffin is a touchdown monster. You can rely on him, especially against the Bengals this week, and Sam Darnold continues that connection. And Dallas Goedert has come to life recently as they go to 2 tight end sets a lot in Philly as they're missing that explosive wide receiver talent. Defenses, Panthers, Eagles, Jets, you know who they're playing. They got plus matchups. I don't need to go into it much more than that. That does it for fantasy advice, guys. Now we're on to our betting segment. Run a little money instrumental here. Feel that? I feel it. All right. Betting advice, 7-3 last week. We're gonna keep that going. Look, I already made a few bets this week. I know there's no way for you guys to verify this. I'm just saying this to brag. Already took the Bears -3. They won that game by 4. That was close. Took the Saints -7. They won that game by 8. That was close. And I also took the under at 38.5 in the Bears versus Lions game. There were 44 points in that game scored. Shocking, I know. So I'm already starting out 2-1. Don't worry though, guys. I got so many options for you. As opposed to a couple weeks ago where I told you guys there were a lot of bets that I did not like. This week there are a ton of bets that I do like. So, which sometimes could be scary. There could be a setup for a lot of trap games, potential trap games here. We'll be careful. I'll get you through. Look, I went over the numbers earlier. I think it was this Tuesday, so I know which way the money is going. We got a lot of money going even, and we got a lot of money going with, so we're gonna wanna pull back and change a couple of bets and do a couple that are going against Vegas just because we don't wanna bet with the money of the people when Vegas is the one that constantly wins, right? The casinos always win, so we want to be on the winning side here. Those of you listening on the podcast, I am taking long, illustrious sips of Diet Pepsi, and I apologize, but you're just going to have to wait. All right. We got first look bets, guys. Packers -7. If I expect the Packers to bounce back and bounce back big, then they're going to win this game by more than 7 points. Now, I realize that most of this year, most games have been close, which is strangely odd. Conspiracy theorists out there unite. It's weird to have a lot of close games. Blowouts are part of NFL. If you go back and look at it back in the day, they would have about 4 or 5 blowouts every week. It seems like every game is within a few points nowadays. Weird, I know, but I like the Packers bouncing back. There are going to be people thinking that the Packers are struggling. Maybe they're done. Maybe they've been exposed after a game like they had against the Niners and against the Chargers. I don't think so. The Niners just happen to match up well against the Packers. I know I've said that about a million times here, but the Giants do not have the personnel to do what the Niners or the Chargers did to the Packers. Packers are going to get back on track. Take the Packers -7. Next, we got the Ravens -6, guys. I know, faithful, you hate it when I bet against the Niners, but look, so far, when I bet with the Niners and or against them, I have won pretty much every week. It was 1 week I lost. 1 week I bet against them and lost. I like the Ravens -6. I think the Ravens can win this game, and they have the potential to win this game by big. Niners might keep them in it, but 6 points isn't a ton. Give me the Ravens -6. That game, both those games, by the way, have stayed even throughout the week. Next, we got Titans +1. This is the first game that did change. The Titans were getting 2.5 points. Now they're only getting 1. Let me explain this to you guys that don't understand the with and against the money. The Titans were getting 2.5 points. They're now only getting 1, which means everybody, the United States population, is is betting on the Titans, putting that money on the Titans, Vegas now has to decrease the amount of points that the Titans are getting in order to make sure that they don't lose a ton of cash if the Titans win, right? The Vegas puts out the spreads, and they let the public kind of dictate which way these go. If too much money gets lopsided on one side, then they kind of even things back out. So if I say even money, the spread has stayed the same the entire time. If I say with the money, that means everybody's betting this way. This is the way everybody's betting. Vegas stands to make money if it goes the other way. And since I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist, I'm always going to try to lean on the side of against the money, which means we're going to go the opposite direction of everybody else because Vegas always wins. We want to be on that side. We're going to go that way. This one here happens to be with the money. Since I think the Titans can win the game no matter what, I'm not too worried. They were getting 2.5, now they're only getting 1. But if I think they're just going to win the game, then they should be an underdog here. So give me the Titans plus the point as a bonus. Second take. We're on to our second take games, guys. Pats minus 3.5. I like this game better if it's at minus 3. This game has stayed even throughout the week. Most games stayed even this week, guys. 3.5 is, you know, I like the Pats because of their defense. They're not a monstrous offense by any means, and that Texans defense can play and perform at times. So, as I just said, I like the Pats better if they were minus 3. They are minus 3.5. I think they can cover it. The Pats are a better team than the Texans, and we've been winning money on the Pats all year. Just like I've been winning money on the Seahawks all year, I've been winning money on the Pats all year. We're going to keep doing it, all right? Till it stops. Oh, and speaking of the devil, Pete Carroll and the Seahawks are minus 3. That money has stayed even. I told you guys earlier on in the Green Zone, Pete Carroll made a deal with the devil, sold his soul in order to make the Seahawks good year after year and also cover that damn spread. I think the NFL loves him for it. Seahawks minus 3. That game has stayed even. I like that one as well. Eagles minus 10. It's another game that has stayed even, hasn't changed all week. The Eagles are better than the Dolphins by more than 10 points. They should absolutely railroad the Dolphins, no problem. I think the Eagles are looking to make a statement. This could be that statement game for them. I mean, I wouldn't berate you if you took the Dolphins plus the 10 just because the money line and the reward's a little bit better for the underdog in this one. But I think the Eagles probably win this game by 14, maybe more. Third glance games. Look, if you haven't watched my podcast, I don't know where you've been, but I will warn you, these third glance games, they're kind of a crapshoot. I just throw them out there for mostly fun. I got 3 of them for you this week. Tampa plus 1. This has been the biggest, should I say, spread difference through the week, right? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers started out as a plus 1 underdog. They're now minus 3. Which means a lot of people are taking the Buccaneers plus the points. That makes me want to go against the money, and that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say take the Buccaneers, take the Buccaneers, whoever they're playing, and take the point as we just go contrarian on that one just for fun. Raiders, it's Buccaneers versus Jaguars. Take the Jaguars plus the 1 point. Look, every time I bet on the Jags, I lose. That's why I don't bet on the Jags no more. That's why I don't even have them written down here. But if we want to go contrarian, we want to go against the money and what's been the biggest shift in a spread, go Jaguars plus 1. It'll be Jaguars plus 3 at this point. They were plus 1, now they're minus 3, which means the Jaguars will have 3 points. Take the Jaguars plus points. Moving on. Raiders plus 10.5. Look, the Chiefs beat teams. They do not beat the pants off of teams. Now, I just mentioned earlier in the head-to-head that I think the Chiefs could blow out the Raiders. They can. They can absolutely blow out the Raiders. But if we just want to go against the money and we just want to... this one's actually with the money because they were getting 10. Now they're getting 10.5. If we just... Let's switch that then. This is an update right now, boys and girls. We're going to go Chiefs minus 10.5. This is an in-game live change of a switch happening in front of your eyes. You're welcome. Let's go Chiefs minus 10.5 just to be contrarian as that money line went from Raiders plus 10 to Raiders plus 10.5. Meaning that, No. Oh my God, cancel everything. We're going Raiders plus 10.5 because that is against the money. They were at plus 10. They're now getting that extra half point, which means a lot of people are taking the Chiefs minus the points. So take the Raiders plus 10.5. simply to be contrarian, guys, I think the Chiefs could blow out the Raiders here. That's what my gut tells me. However, if the Raiders hang in, it's a total trap game. A lot of people are looking at that Raider game last week and saying, oh my God, the Raiders just lost to the Jets. Like, I understand that it was in New York, but geez Louise, that's the third win of the Jets this year. How do the Raiders do that? They were within the playoff reach. They're still in the playoff hunt. Sixth team in the AFC as far as the playoff picture goes, and they lost and laid an egg against the Jets. Now they got to play the Chiefs who are looking to bounce back and have a, great rest of the season. Like, how are they going to do this? That's why I think a lot of people are taking the Chiefs minus the points. So let's expect the refs to help the Raiders and get past this one. And, Raiders, Vegas, NFL shake hands and say thank you very much. Cardinals +3, guys. This game's even. This is a game I'd stay away from just because when I close my eyes and I picture it, I could see either the Rams or the Cardinals winning this game. It's a divisional game, so it should be close, but at the same time, there's potential for a blowout here. So everything I could see happening in this one, give me the Cardinals +3 just for shits and giggles. All right, moving on. Last game here I have for you guys is the Vikings versus the Seahawks. The over at 50. I like this to be a high-scoring game, as the Vikings can be had through the air. They do have a good secondary, but Xavier Rhodes is looking like toast recently, and the Seahawks secondary has been struggling all year. So I expect both teams to get their points and basically get theirs. The over is sitting at 50. That means we are going with the money because earlier this week it was at 49. It's a point difference. We'll see how that pans out. That's it for the betting segment. We are now going to move on to Week 12 review, guys. For those of you just trying to make your money and get in, get out, I'll see you later. But for those of you that are trying to learn how I know what I know and do what I do, you might want to stay tuned for the review. Apologize for the rhyme. It really happens all the time. All right. Now we've got Week 12 review. First up, guys, we have the Steelers at the Bengals. Look, last week I told you guys there were a lot of strange matchups. And what I meant were there were a lot of matchups where you just said to yourself, how are these two teams going to score? This being one of them, the Steelers at the Bengals. Neither team has a quarterback. Neither team has an offense. How are these two teams going to score? Well, they didn't really. I mean, there weren't a lot of high-scoring games out of those ones. But coming in this game, the Steelers had beaten the Bengals 9 straight times in this divisional matchup. Ryan Finley threw a couple of decent passes in this game, so sign him up as the Bengals starting quarterback for the next decade, right? That's how the Cincinnati Bengals tend to work. You throw like 1 or 2 good passes, and then they make you your starter for just like 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Andy Dalton, terrible decision-making from the top to the bottom for the Bengals. I apologize and feel bad for you, Bengal fans. Mason Rudolph gets benched in this one, and you knew it was only a matter of time. I think that probably continues to be the case in Pittsburgh. What you didn't know is that the guy they brought in, Duck Hodges, the new starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, would immediately throw a 79-yard touchdown pass to James Washington. The stiff arm he gave to put the Bengals DB on his back was hilarious. Go back and watch it if you have not yet. Apparently the nickname Duck Hodges was given to him because he was a champion duck caller back in college. I did not know that. I definitely had to look that up. A little bit of research was necessary on that one. I didn't even know that there was such thing as champion duck callers, but I guess that's what happens when you grow up in California Bay Area. I mean, that's California boy born and raised. I didn't even know the duck calling was a competitive thing. And I apologize to all you boys out there in the duck blinds hunting. Broncos at Bills. Another one right here, right off the rip. Broncos at Bills. How are these two teams going to score? Good defenses. Give quarterbacks challenge. Not that great of offenses. But that pick that Josh Allen threw, Chris Harris Jr., hit him right in stride. Now, unfortunately, Chris Harris Jr., he plays for the Broncos, and Josh Allen plays for the Bills. So he misread the jerseys, but good God, did he hit him right in stride. That was hilarious. The Broncos, he really did lead them perfectly as I read this in my notes here. That broke Allen's streak of passes without a pick, which he was second in the league behind Cousins before that pick. The Bills get their first pick in the last 5 games off of Big Hands Allen. Robert Foster pulls a hamstring after his second reception of the season, and you hate to see that, but some people are just injury-prone, guys. And if you played sports, you recognize these guys. They're the guys that are always nursing an injury, coming back from an injury, or there's something just nagging at them constantly, and Robert Foster is that type of player. So, I mean, I feel for you Bills fans, as the Niners seem to have a lot of these players too, but you kind of expected that to happen, right? The Broncos were shut out in the first half. John Brown lays out for an incredible over-the-shoulder diving catch, and the officials tried to take it away from him. But Sean McDermott challenges and gets the call right, fortunately to prevent the refs from stealing great football from us once again. And this is why challenges and reviews are still very important, folks. We need to keep them in the game. Congrats to Frank Gore, who passes Barry Sanders in this game to become the third leading rusher of all time. Guys, if you haven't been paying attention, John Brown has been a stud. I know that the Bills already played, and he put up just over 10 points in fantasy, but that's where he's been all year. He's put up 10 points or more consistently all year. He's having an incredible year. Congrats to you, John Brown. Raiders at Jets. There was a touchdown scored as a result of offensive pick play. And this was reviewed as all scoring plays are, and without a challenge call or a challenge flag being thrown by Gruden. It's very weird and something I've never seen before. On top of that, it was overturned, as we haven't seen many pass interference, offensive or defensive pass interference, get overturned. The way it's called on the field is the way that it stands. This one got overturned. So it was the right call, and I'm happy it was made, but it has not happened as of yet and was really weird to see. My prediction of Max Crosby being in the backfield and in Sam Darnold's lap all game was right and on point. That is a prediction that is becoming more and more easy to predict with how Max is playing. But Darnold was still able to produce, which was impressive. Coming into this game, Carr led the AFC, second in the NFL in completion percentage. Breeze is number one. Obviously, Carr struggled as the Jets did, and he got benched in the fourth quarter as they were out of it much before then. Ryan Griffin gets in the end zone again, and I told you guys all Griffin has done since taking over the starting position for Herndon is produce fantasy points. I believe that continues this week. I also told you guys I would not be surprised if the Jets beat the Raiders in this one, as the Raiders are incredibly hard to handicap. We've now lost betting on the Raiders 2 weeks in a row, and what that tells me is I should no longer bet on them for the remainder of the season. So that third glance bet that I told you, take the Raiders plus the points, take this into consideration. I have not won a game betting for or against the Raiders all year. So now be careful as I apply this rule to not only the Raiders but the Vikings. I like to stay away from them. And I do have a game where the Seahawks are going against the Vikings, but we won so much off the Seahawks, we have to roll with that one. Let's just put the rat on the table, boys and girls. The Raiders got steamrolled by a 3-win Jets team. They beat the Raiders so hard that the Raiders ended up taking Carr out of the game and waving the white flag. That was embarrassing for you Oakland/Las Vegas fans. I don't really know how that works. Seahawks at Eagles. Seahawks had a chance to open this thing big in the first half, and Russell Wilson somehow airmailed and missed a wide open Jacob Hollister. All that guy does is score touchdowns, by the way. If you're not aware of who Jacob Hollister is, you will be soon. He just scores touchdowns. And he was set up to do that again. Not sure how Wilson missed him. This was especially weird after Wilson dropped a dime on a flea flicker type play for a touchdown earlier in this game. Look, I've praised Wilson all year, so if I'm going to praise him as much as I have, I also got to give him shit when it's due. He struggled the last couple of weeks. He's missed a couple of passes, but I think, he's going to fix that. He's going to bounce back. Expect him to bounce back this week. Later in this game, Wilson dropped another diamond right into the hands of the young DJ Metcalf, only to be dropped for a would-be touchdown. This was a close game that sat at 7-3 for a long time, but did anyone ever feel like the Eagles were going to win? No, nobody ever did. Because even though it sat at that low-scoring game for a while because the Eagles' defense is better than people give them credit for, everybody knew that the Eagles' offense wasn't going to score. And they just didn't. They looked terrible. Wentz looks awful. He got the Dolphins this week, but anytime he goes against a tough defense, man, he's struggling. The Eagles are missing too many skill position players to injury, and they clearly lack a number one offensive go-to weapon. However, their play calling has been questionable at best. On the touchdown rush by Penny, that was a pitiful tackling attempt by the DB. He ran up and basically gave him a love tap, shoulder bump that didn't even attempt to wrap up. It was absolutely embarrassing. And if he brings them down there is a chance that they can keep the Seahawks out of the end zone and the game stays close at 13-3. Instead, they go up 20-3, so it was a big play. Chris Carson fumbled the ball twice in a row late in the game to give the Eagles a little life, but that life is quickly snuffed out by the Seahawks D, or maybe it was the Eagles' inept offense. I'll let you guys decide. Late in the game, when Carson went through a pick, the replay gave us quarterback view of that play. And Carson stared down his target the entire time. He did not look away from where he was throwing. This is what is starting to make me think maybe Wentz isn't cut out for the NFL. I mean, he is staring down targets. He is not moving his eyes from where he's going. And if you're an experienced veteran DB, that's a pick waiting to happen all game and all day long. Remember that the Seahawks were getting a point in this game, one of those bets we made money off of, but that's how much better the NFC West is than your division. And we're going to do that again this week. Bears at Giants. How are these two teams going to score, right? Theme of the week. The Bears offense has let the team down so much that you can see it starting to affect the psyche of the defense. They're still playing at a high level, but being on the field all game and knowing your offense is just not going to get it done. It just makes it hard to play balls to the wall every single down. Props to them. They won again this week. They keep winning, so they're hanging in there. Trubisky throws a touchdown to Allen Robinson on a post pattern, and he almost underthrew that ball. Robinson was wide open. It's one of the easier throws to make. It's down the middle of the field. You just have to lead your receiver a little bit, and he almost underthrew him. Robinson reached back, made the catch, and he was able to score. But, boy, that was a lot more exciting than it had to be. Trubisky later ran in for a touchdown, and that is how Trubisky is more effective, when he uses his legs and he's able to be a threat on the ground and through the air. That is how he's going to be harder to defend moving forward. It's what he's going to have to do. The successful two-point conversion try that was overturned by offensive PI was the best throw Trubisky has made in a while. And it was all set up by the forced fumble turnover by Khalil Mack. But he was rolling out. Trubisky was rolling out to his right. He dropped a dime of a bullet into the. He threw a bullet into the corner of the end zone where only his receiver could catch it. And quite honestly, it was a great throw. Panthers at Saints. Sean Payton decides to go for it on 4th and 1 on his own 34 with a 17-9 lead, definitely making the statement that they were not going to be satisfied with a close win. They would have gotten the first, but they had a penalty against them to call it back. Panthers go for it on 3rd and goal with 3 seconds left in the half and get an easy touchdown. I understand a play action from 1 to 3 yards out is not the first thing that you plan for as a D, but how in the hell McCaffrey ever gets that wide open, that close to the end zone afterwards, or in the end zone, you tell me. I don't know how that ever happens. Afterwards, Riverboat Ron decides to go for 2. He doesn't get it, and to me, he lost a little bit of momentum going into the half at that point. It wasn't the end of the world, but I think you just go for the extra point at that point. You scored that touchdown, you get that extra point, you go into half feeling good. Instead, you get the touchdown, you miss the 2-point conversion, you give the defense and the home crowd a little bit of like an accomplished feeling, even though they just let up a last-second touchdown. It kind of backfired a little bit in that regard. Can't be guarded Mike snags 2 more touchdowns and continues his bid for a non-QB MVP win. Look, who's kidding who, guys? The QBs usually win the MVP race, but if there's ever been a guy to press the non-QB position MVP goes to me type race, it's Mike Thomas. He's having an incredible year, and if you don't have him on your short list of possible MVPs this year, you are not watching football. He literally cannot be guarded. Is it just me, or does Sean Payton's face always look like a 7-year-old who's throwing a tantrum? That's what he looks like to me. He almost looks like he has a 7-year-old body, too. Maybe he just got told he couldn't get the candy near the checkout counter at the store or something like that. But that's, every time I see his face, that's what he looks like to me. Either that or he just ate something sour. I don't know. You tell me. Riverboat Ron shows us all why you never take points off the board for your own team. Never take points off the board for your own team. It doesn't matter if you got 3 and now you have an option for 7. You never take points off the board for your own team. Dolphins at Browns. Kareem Hunt got his first touchdown of the year in this one, and the Dolphins kind of played the role of Oprah in this one, right? And you get a touchdown, and you get a touchdown, and everyone gets a touchdown. That's what it's like when you play the Dolphins. Not much to talk about here, guys, as a mediocre Browns team beat up on a terrible Dolphins team. It is worth noting that before the year started, when the expectations were high for this Browns team, that I had said that they would come out and underperform with all their expectations on them, and that they would eventually get it together and go on a 5-6 win streak, and it's looking like they may have started that win streak. I know I've mentioned that about 8 times. I'll mention it 9 or 10 if it continues to happen, just to give you a little bit of a warning there. Jarvis Landry scored another touchdown in this game. That now makes it 4 games in a row that he's found pay dirt. Holy smokes. Buccaneers at Falcons, guys. Woo-wee! Is it just me, or does it seem like the Buccaneers can only ever have one wide receiver go off at any given moment? I get it. Unless you have Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, you probably haven't really noticed this. Unless you have Mike Evans or Chris Godwin on your fantasy team, you probably haven't noticed this. But the trend that the Buccaneers have is that only one of them can go off in any given game. Now, that one receiver goes off for about 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, which is great if you have that guy. But if you're like me and you have Mike Evans on your daily or on your standard, season format fantasy team, there are games where Mike Evans goes without a touch and Chris Godwin gets about 13 catches for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Then there will be games where Mike Evans gets the same stat line and Chris Godwin gets nothing. It's really weird. I don't really understand why the 2 of the top tier best wide receivers in the game can't go off in the same game, but that's basically what happens. Maybe it's the defenses decide to shut one of them down, but you're just opening yourself up to the other one. You just have to play bracket coverage on both of them. Probably a little cover 2, safety. So Mike Evans probably don't bother. Other than that, it was a typical Jameis Winston-led offense day. You're always going to get picks with him, but you may also get 400-plus yards and multiple touchdowns. That's just who Jameis Winston is. I think the right situation for Winston could be a very good, solid backup quarterback. He's not consistent enough to be a starting quarterback, guys, but I think he could be a great backup somewhere. And I think, maybe after this year or maybe a couple years with Arians in Tampa, I think they realize that and they move on. And he ends up a backup somewhere. And I think he ends up a good backup. He's got a good attitude. He's super competitive. He likes to win. And it's genuine, his attitude of, wanting to win. It's very genuine. He's not putting on a front there. Lions at Redskins, guys. How were these two teams going to score? Driscoll went back to struggling against the vaulted Redskins defense. I knew once I laid some money on Jeff Driscoll or a Jeff Driscoll-led offense, he would struggle, and of course he did. So we're never going to do that again. That's why I took the Bears minus the points this last week, and I won. Not a lot of notes on this game, guys, as it was a combination of a game no one cared about and was low scoring and boring to boot. Despite the struggles of the Lions offense without Stafford, they led throughout the entirety of this game. Side note on this game, I streamed the Lions D specifically for this game in my season-long fantasy, and it turned out to be a phenomenal decision. Jaguars at Titans, guys. Look, Derrick Henry is 6'3", 237 pounds, to give you guys an idea of how massive this man is. And on top of that, I constantly hear announcers for that game. The announcers of the game, they go down, they like to talk to the players before when the players are stretching and get an idea of, game plan and what the players are feeling, blah, 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 so they can have side stories while they narrate the game. Every single one of those guys seems to say he's even bigger in person. That's knowing that the guy's 6'3", 237. So most people don't want to get in line to try to tackle that steam-rolling train of a beast of a man. That is why he's having an amazing season. That is why the Titans get him the ball and get him the ball often. The Titans have won 4 of their last 5 games, and they've played against the Jaguars. That's why we won money off this game. We knew that going in. Tannehill has now played 4 games since taking over for Mariota and is 3-1. In those 4 starts, he has 3 game-winning drives to boot. That's playing well, guys. That's another Dolphins player that since leaving Miami has played much better. Cowboys at Pats, guys. The wet and cold weather in Foxborough definitely favored the Pats. Going into this game, that looked good for us. I did tell you guys to put the money on the Pats. It turned out well. We won this game. All that trash I talked about the Cowboys D, and they came into this game 7th in overall defense in the NFL. So for as much crap as I gave them, they're 7th overall in the NFL. I just see their D as their weakness, whereas last year, their running game and their D was their strength. Their passing game and their skill player position offense was their weakness. It seems to be that they can pass all day, they can score all day, but they can't stop that many teams, which 7th overall kind of doesn't say that. So this might be a situation where the numbers are lying. I see the Cowboys giving up more points than they were last year. Packers at 49ers, guys. The Packers were getting absolutely shut down until the NFL gifted them a touchdown. That was a gifted touchdown for you, Packers, so you're welcome. This was in order to keep the game close and viewers interested. You guys know how I feel about primetime games. I told you the Niners were going to blow them out. I told you the only way the Packers would stay in this game is if the NFL decided, hey, it's a primetime televised game, nationally televised, we got to keep it close. They tried. They really did try. They gifted that Green Bay touchdown to the Packers. Now, the Niners need to get a little less handsy in their DB, but I'm seeing pass interference calls and holding calls and other such things called against the Niners. I am not seeing getting called across the NFL. Look, I watch 7 hours of football all and every Sunday. I'm telling you, I'm not being a fan or a homer on this one. There were some calls in this game that are not getting called in any other game across the NFL. So that was a little disappointing and annoying. That was a disgusting call on Sherman, and the personal foul were both, and Richard Sherman. The personal foul call on Richard Sherman was embarrassing and disgusting to watch. Both Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels, two guys that have probably seen over 1 million football games combined, didn't even understand what the call was. They didn't even understand what the personal foul was. Chris Collinsworth watched the replay and said, "You're allowed to do that though, right?" Yeah, those guys have seen more combined football than anybody probably on this earth. Let's get real. Moving along, Sherman did what Sherman did maybe wasn't necessary, but was perfectly legal. This is the type of stuff that makes me question the league, because I feel like it's too incomprehensible to have this many close games. Do you realize that having every other game have a victory margin by 3 or less is nearly impossible? Go ahead and do the odds on that, guys. It's nearly impossible. Nowadays, if you're getting blown out on a nationally televised game, you will get some help. That's just the way that it goes. They'll allow a blowout every now and again to throw people off, but for the most part, this is how it's done. And the shit's getting old and ridiculous. But anyways, the next series when the Niners got the ball and threw a touchdown bomb to Kittle is exactly what the NFL refs deserve. That's exactly what they deserve there. They're trying to keep it close. They give the Packers a touchdown. Very next play from scrimmage for the Niners, they throw it deep. They go across or down the middle to George Kittle, and he goes for a long touchdown just to negate that touchdown the Packers just got. It's exactly what they deserve. Niners dominated this game just like I thought and said they would on last week's podcast. They just match up very well against Aaron Rodgers and what that Packers team is trying to do offensively. You're not going to be able to do it against teams like the Niners or the Chargers. They just have too much talent on the secondary level. Too much talent and speed on the secondary level to be able to pass the ball all over the place, to be able to make your running game, your short passing game to your running backs, basically your running game, which is what the Packers like to do. Too much speed on the field for the Niners defense for that to happen. Too much speed on the field for the Chargers defense for that to happen. The linebackers for the Niners are fast even. They don't even have to take them off the field. Fred Warner played a hell of a game. He was all over Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was terrible in that game. He was tied for the lead in touchdowns with Christian McCaffrey going into it. So congrats to the Niners and a big win. It's funny to me how, around the Bay, you're starting to now get Raider fans jumping on that Niner bandwagon. After last week in particular, I think Raider fans were holding out hope, staying on their, possibly playoff-bound Raider team. But then a combination of a week where the Raiders lost to the Jets, Niners on a nationally televised game beat a good Packers team. Up to this point, I heard a lot of Raider fans, especially in the area that I work, saying, "Oh yeah, the Niners haven't played anybody." Now, after this win, I'm running into a lot of people that were Raider fans saying, "Oh, I like the Niners. I think I've been a Niner fan all along." So it's funny how things have shifted out here in the Bay. But hey, jump on the bandwagon, folks. The more, the merrier. That does it for the review, guys. I know there's a few games that I didn't go over. I don't really care. We're getting close to our 50-minute mark, and I don't like to go over that. So thank you for listening, you beautiful, beautiful listeners. Tune in next week as I will get you rich once again.